Have you noticed that your late night scrolling has taken on a dark, almost obsessive quality? You're lying in bed, bathed in the blue light of your screen, reading thread after thread about economic collapse, global conflict, political disaster, or AI taking over the world. You feel your chest tightening. Your anxiety is spiking. You know, logically, that consuming this information is completely destroying your peace of mind, and yet you cannot look away. You refresh the page, you look for more bad news. You tell yourself you're just staying informed or preparing for what's coming. But what if your obsession with the end of the world has absolutely nothing to do with global events? What if you are obsessively tracking the collapse of society because, on some hidden level, subconscious level, you are desperately hoping that it happens? Hi, I'm Paul, and this is Tarot Logic. When you find yourself stuck in a doom-scrolling loop, your first instinct is to blame the technology. You think, well, the algorithm is feeding me negativity. I need to put my phone in another room. I need a digital detox. You recognize the physical toll it's taking on you, the brain fog, the low-grade dread, the feeling that nothing you do matters because it's all going to burn down anyway. But despite knowing all of this, the moment you have 3 minutes of downtime in the grocery store line, or the moment your alarm goes off in the morning, your thumb automatically goes right back to the disaster feed. You might find yourself having conversations with your friends where you almost sound excited about how bad things are getting. You swap theories about, supply chain failures or grid collapses. There is a strange, twisted comfort you're finding in the idea of impending doom. And then a wave of guilt washes over you. You think, what's wrong with me? Why am I actively seeking out the worst possible information? Am I just deeply pessimistic? It feels like you're sitting in the passenger seat of a car, watching it head straight off a cliff, and instead of hitting the brakes, you just turn up the volume on the radio. So here's what's actually happening beneath the surface, and I need you to hear this clearly. You're not doom scrolling because you are afraid the world is going to end. You are doom scrolling because you are exhausted and the end of the world looks like a way out. You are experiencing a radical burnout from the performance of modern life. You're tired of the emails, the mortgage payments, the social obligations, and the constant pressure to optimize yourself. But you feel completely trapped. You've built a life that you don't actually like, but you're too afraid to tear it down yourself. So, your psyche starts to look for an external solution. You begin to fantasize about an external apocalypse because an external collapse would give you the ultimate permission to stop participating. Think about it. If society collapses tomorrow, you don't have to go to that pointless meeting on Monday. You don't have to worry about your credit score. You don't have to figure out how to break up with your partner or quit your job or confront the fact that you're fundamentally unhappy. You're using the threat of global catastrophe to validate your internal feeling of collapse. You want the outside world to match the absolute exhaustion you feel on the inside. You're seeking the apocalypse because you are desperate for a reset button. Now, let's look at how this plays out in the micro scenario of life. You're sitting at your desk, looking at a spreadsheet that means absolutely nothing to you. You feel a profound sense of emptiness. So you open a new tab and you read an article about how the financial markets are on the brink of ruin. Consciously, you feel a spike of fear. But subconsciously, you feel a tiny, dark spark of relief. The relief comes from the thought, if it all crashes, none of this matters. I won't have to do this anymore. Mainstream psychology will tell you that doom scrolling is an evolutionary survival mechanism, that your brain is wired to look for threats to keep you safe. And yeah, maybe that's biologically true. It completely misses the spiritual reality of what you're doing. You're not looking for a threat to run from. You're looking for a savior. Looking for a disaster big enough to forcibly rip you out of the cage you built for yourself. Because you cannot find the courage to unlock the door with your own hands. The contrast is jarring. We think we are terrified of losing our normal lives, but the amount of time we spend fantasizing about the end of the world proves that we're actually terrified that our normal lives are never going to end. We're terrified that we're just going to have to keep doing this day in and day out forever. So why do we fall into this trap? Because taking personal responsibility for your own misery is the hardest thing a human being can do. Every single one of us has a true will, an authentic, uncompromised path that we're meant to walk. But aligning with that true will requires massive, localized destruction. If you want to live a life that actually feels real to you, you have to burn down the parts of your current life that are fake. You have to disappoint people. You have to quit things. You have to be the bad guy in someone else's story. And that requires an immense amount of personal friction. It is highly uncomfortable. So instead of initiating a micro collapse in your own life, you wait for a macro collapse in the world. You outsource your transformation to the news cycle. If you burn down your own life, it's your fault and you have to clean up the mess. If the economy crashes or an asteroid hits the earth, you get the dramatic change you crave, but you get to remain a victim. It is the ultimate abdication of your internal authority. You're giving the government or the economy or the climate the power to dictate when your new life gets to begin. So how do we break the cycle of outsourcing our own apocalypse? How do we stop waiting for the world to end and start actually living in it? First, we call out the fantasy. The next time you find yourself deep in a doom-scrolling spiral, I want you to stop and ask yourself a brutally honest question. What exactly am I hoping this disaster will save me from? If the world ended tomorrow, what is the one thing you would be most relieved to never have to do again? Is it your job, a specific relationship, a financial obligation? Whatever that thing is, that's your target. That's the area of your life that requires an immediate, radical intervention. And second, initiate a micro-collapse. Stop waiting for a global event to give you permission to change. You need to start burning the dead wood in your own life today. Set a boundary that terrifies you. Cancel a commitment you've been dreading for a month. Tell the truth in a situation where normally you would have faked it. You need to prove to your own nervous system that you are capable of surviving the friction of change without needing the entire world to fall apart first. Be the architect of your own destruction. Third, shrink your perimeter. You're not built to process the trauma of 8 billion people in real time. It is short-circuiting your spiritual bandwidth. For the next week, I want you to dramatically shrink the perimeter of your concern. You're not allowed to worry about what is happening on the other side of the planet. You're only allowed to focus on what is happening in your house, on your street, and in your immediate physical reality. Take back your energy from the digital void and inject it directly into the physical space around you. I want you to fundamentally reframe this obsession with the end times. If you're constantly looking for signs that the world is ending, it's not because you're broken, and it's not because you're a negative person. It's because your internal alarm system is functioning perfectly. Your soul is screaming at you about the way you're currently living your life and saying it's entirely unsustainable. The apocalypse you're looking for isn't global, it's deeply personal. It is the end of your tolerance for an inauthentic life. You do not need to wait for a disaster to wipe the slate clean. You have the authority right now in this exact moment to decide that the old version of you is dead. You have the power to walk away from the scripts you didn't write and the rooms you don't want to be in. So stop waiting for the world to end and start doing the brave, terrifying work of building a new one right here where you stand. I'm Paul, and I'll see you in the next one.